Stephen Adams, Field Director, son of Mr. and Mrs. John Adams. Richard Anthony, son of Mr. and Mrs. Eugene W. Anthony. Terry Beaner, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Philip Beaner. Robin Booker, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Booker. David Brodak, son of Mr. and Mrs. James Brodak. Jeff Campbell, son of Mr. and Mrs. Horatio Campbell. Lisa Annette Cravella, daughter of Mrs. Angelo Cravella. Tricia Ann De Palma, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Patsy De Palma. Jeannie Doncaster, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. John Doncaster. Michelle Garlitz, daughter of John and Sarah Garlitz. Brian Geckel, son of Charles and Joanne Geckel. Ann Good, daughter of Joan and Bill Good. Dorothy Harr, color guard captain, daughter of Merle and Betty Harr. Bonnie Hawkins, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Hugh Hawkins. Susan Hockenberry, daughter of George and Ellen Hockenberry. Craig Hood, son of Fred and Carol Hood. Amy Huber, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Huber. Brenda Kinnear, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Albert Kinnear. Tom Klein, son of Mr. and Mrs. Thomas J. Klein Sr. Lori Kuhn, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Edward Kuhn. Lori Coons, head silk, daughter of Jeff and Jean Coons. Evelyn Kurtz, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Worman Kurtz. Lisa Lohr, daughter of Mrs. Sarah Lohr. Joyce Miller, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Eugene M. Miller. Sam Miller, son of Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Miller. Sandra Momeyer, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. William Momeyer. Lynn Mott, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Gabriel Mott, escorted by Mr. and Mrs. Charles Craig. Richard Nemeth, son of Mr. and Mrs. Stephen Nemeth. Angela Louise Rosensteel, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Al Rosensteel. Deborah Ann Schwalke, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Schwalke. Jody Scott, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Donald Scott. Diane Sestak, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Sestak. Nina Marie Sharon, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. William Sharon. Don Matthew Silk, Field Director, son of Mr. and Mrs. David Silk. Kathleen Lee Sabinski, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Edward Eden Sabinski. Maria Alana Splendor, Majorette Captain, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. William Splendor. John Wesley Stein, son of Mr. and Mrs. 8283 Mount Pleasant Viking Band.